Matric exams in 2020 will begin on the 5th of November and run until the 15th of December. The Basic Education Department says this will allow schools and pupils enough time to cover the curriculum following disruptions caused by COVID-19. Pupils who were meant to write their senior certificate exams in May and June will also be allowed to rewrite in November. More than 1.1 million pupils are expected to sit for the 2020 combined matric exams, and their results will be released on the 23rd of February. The Gauteng Education Department will fork out 3 million rands to assist the cash-strapped National School of the Arts. This as the school reached out to its alumni to help raise funds. It still needs another 2 million rand to stay afloat. Newzroom Afrika's Namtosa with the detail now.
Hope is on the horizon for the National School of Arts as the Gauteng Department of Education steps in to keep it afloat.
We will be giving them just about 3 million rand for them to continue with the programs. But over and above that, what we will normally require is them justifying the money that we're going to allocate to them. So we will be monitoring all of them, including this school, very closely, those that would have been allocated with the additional funding.
According to the department, this is an additional allocation. The school already received over 1 million rands in annual allocations, but the COVID-19 pandemic has had a dire impact, with as much as 40% of parents unable to pay school fees.
Probably by the end of August, we should have allocated the money to the school. But indeed, there's no way that the school will be closing. I mean, it's a model that we want for the department and the future of Gauteng. So there's no way that we will not support them.
But the school is not out the woods yet. It needs about 2 million rands to keep going.
Well, first with the money, we've broken it up into units of school fees. Our school fees annually are 26,400, and that is essentially to get 150 bursaries. That takes up to 4 million rand, and the other 1 million rand will obviously be for our, our production costs, our maintenance costs for the school, making sure that we have got the right educators, making sure that the building is safe, that it's well maintained. The school needs a lot of money monthly to run. And so the 5 million rand will really see us through from now until the end of the year and possibly into early 2021.
While financial constraints could mean retrenchments for the school governing body, the department continues to urge those parents who can afford to pay school fees to do so. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Namtosa in Johannesburg.
Namtosa for us there tonight. Thank you. Now, as pupils return to school in various phases, social distancing and the availability of PPE remains a concern, but some unions and school governing bodies are also worried about pupil attendance, warning against a further closure of schools. Basil Manuel, who's the Executive Director of the National Professional Teachers Organization of South Africa, Naptosa, joins us now to talk about this. Basil, good to talk to you again this evening. Was it a smooth return on Tuesday?
Good evening. Well, in a measure it was, for those who got there. But of course, when we did some stats for the grade 7s, we picked up that between 50 and 60% of the learners only returned. Now that's worrying. And today it appears better, but we don't have the full stats yet. And the same with the matriculants. Last week it ranged about 70%, and it picked up towards the end of the week to 75%. Now that is not good enough. You can't have 25% of learners out of school. And that is what worries us. But we are further concerned that the department must be using this time to ensure that schools are ready, that schools have been provided with the necessary equipment so that we don't have additional disruptions. Naptosa has continually called for schools to be correctly prepared so that we don't have a need for these unscheduled stoppages.
Right, let's talk about the factors then that created the low attendance.
Well, It's a mixed bag, I suppose. We don't know exactly why, but it could be that there are some schools where there have been disruptions. We know in Gauteng on Friday there were 28 schools that were closed. We know that in the Western Cape there were a number of schools closed by community members, parents, organizations. And we had hoped that the closure now would have given the department time to consolidate and talk to the groups and find out what the issues were. It is not good enough to just simply issue an edict, regulation that says we're going to charge people, etc. Let's find out what the issues are and solve them. But ostensibly that hasn't been done. So we are concerned, and some parents may just be keeping kids at home. That is also not good enough. And our biggest fear with the matriculants is that some of them may just have dropped out. Now, that is why we as a union says we can't afford to have this interruption every now and again. We need to have a sustained return, particularly for the matrics. And honestly, the matrics are under severe pressure. Some of them have lost out 3 months. They haven't had tuition during that time through no fault of their own. The system hasn't changed. They're expected to catch up, and the psychological impact on those children is going to be severe. We need to be looking after them a little better than what is happening currently.
Is it not the fact that the issues that were supposed to have been addressed, even when we resolved to close the schools for 2 weeks, have still not been addressed? Poor infrastructure, the lingering problems of no water and toilets are still there, and that's why parents are anxious to bring their kids in, and kids are not comfortable going back.
Absolutely, and it is on the head of the minister, because we have been given an assurance that these things will be attended to. And we will not say to parents and teachers to return to a school that is not ready. They've had now 2 weeks, and there are another 2 weeks to go, to ensure that those things have been attended to. The poor PPEs in provinces like KZN and the Eastern Cape prevented the second and third cohort of learners going back. And it's not about people not wanting to be at work or learners not wanting to be in school. We've got to ensure that they feel safe. And then we've got to communicate better. We've got to demonstrate as a department, that is, to parents that schools are indeed ready and safe, so that they feel comfortable to send their children to the schools.
Now, allegations that SGBs are disrupting schools, what's your reaction to those?
We've seen that, but the question is why? And that is why we are saying as Naptosa that we need to be finding out as the department why a parent would go and close a school. It can't be that they just would like the school doors closed. Every parent wants their children at school. And the parents are reacting to things like the lack of readiness, poor sanitation, ridiculously bad conditions and overcrowding, and nothing has been done about additional classrooms for those schools. So how is social distancing going to happen? How are the safety aspects going to happen? It is fine to say children are less likely to be infected, but all our experts are saying to us, provided that the PPEs, etc., are in place. So now the department needs to be on the scene, doing the right thing, and not hoping and praying that this thing will disappear. It's not going anywhere.
Is it not, though, that also this indicates that that united front that was displayed earlier on when the kids were returning to school between the SGBs, the department, yourselves as teachers and other role players, has now broken down?
No, not at all. We are all at the same place. Everybody wants the children back, provided that the right things are being done. And the concerns that are being expressed are real concerns. Remember, there isn't one system operating in the country. And in every province there are various things happening. Still where they were, at the best place for children is in school. However, fall squarely in the lap of the departments, the provincial departments and the national department.
What should the departments be doing?
Well, look, the very laws published by the Education Ministry say that every child must have certain PPEs, that every employee, says the Department of Labour, must have certain PPEs. If they fail, they are at fault. So they need to see this. But it's also about cleaning the schools. We need to see that the schools have sufficient materials to clean the schools. Staffing. We've had temporary staff appointed where they've had no cleaning staff, and these people still haven't been paid. So how do you expect that these people would continue for 3 more months after not having been paid for the last 2 or 3 months? It's unrealistic. Our systems are just poor. There are just very poor systems in place, and of course we are just not getting up the mast to ensure that what we've promised is delivered. It's time we've stopped promising things and we stopped talking about a new norm. We need to talk about a better norm. Let's work to improving what is there. We are not interested in just words, it's the actions, and parents are reacting to the actions. Teachers, teacher unions are responding to the lack of action that we are seeing on the ground.
All grades back on the 24th of August, is that a possibility, in your view?
Well, according to the directions, all but 2 grades would be back. One in the high school, one in the primary school, are only coming back on the 31st. Now, that is where the real litmus test lies. Will the system be able to cope with that? Now, some provinces have already suggested that they use the week to bring a different grade every week until everybody's back, so that we don't have that crush and rush on the first day. But that notwithstanding, it is going to be a huge task for schools to ensure that they can cope with the sheer number. Remember, 50% of them have to come back, the kids, and because we have to have social distancing, a new timetabling format has to be ready. So there's a lot that schools have been planning and doing. And certainly, I want to acknowledge the many principals and management teams that have worked very hard to get this ready, and the teachers for their commitment to see that this works. And I want to tell you, our members are ready to make it happen. But the department must play its part as well.
Basil, got 30 seconds, quick one. What do you make of the timeline for the timetable for matrics? Is that realistic?
I think that we have forgotten that some of these children have lost 3 months of work. But I also think that the time, it has to happen within this year, but we've got to look at what we are going to be testing on. The ministry has been very quiet on that, and we are pretending as though there was no disruption. I'm worried about the psychological impact on these children and on the parents. Remember, when a child is in matric, the parent is going through that same matric again.